This video is sponsored by Squarespace. It seems like every guy wants to get massive traps these days, upper traps specifically, so they can get that yoked look. This makes you look massive even when you're wearing clothes, but I believe that form should follow function. The best way to train your traps to look massive is to make sure they perform well. With that in mind, I'm going to recommend an exercise that I think can do wonders for building massive traps that also function extremely well. And I think this could be the missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people, but it's not one I hear recommended very often. First though, I'm going to tell you a story that illustrates just why this is so fundamental. So as some of you might know, I've been struggling a bit with a slight lower back pain lately, so I finally decided to see a chiropractor and get some advice from someone who isn't so close to the situation, who can actually look at me back there and see what's going on. What they also said to me when I was lying down on the table for the first time is, "You lift your children with your left arm, don't you?" And I said, "How can you know that from looking at my back?" And they said because the traps on that side were so much more developed than the traps on my right hand side. My son's about 12 kilograms, my daughter's like 17 kilograms. They're basically like kettlebells that I'm carrying around multiple times throughout the day all the time. And this confirmed to me two things. First of all, what I've always said, that what you do inside the gym is just a really small piece of the equation. What's more important is what you do outside the gym, your way of life, because an hour's worth of gym is not going to make up for however many hours worth of doing everything else throughout the day. Even though I train my traps specifically in the gym, you could still see that lopsidedness because of all that incidental training. And at the same time, also reaffirmed to me what I've also thought, which is that the traps are primarily carrying muscles. They're for carrying stuff. And using this information, I found an exercise that I highly recommend. So what am I recommending? That you have kids just so you can walk around with them? Because that's totally not what I did. What if you don't have kids and don't want kids? Should you borrow someone else's kids? Should you just find some kids in the street? No, do not find kids in the street and use them as weights. But there's an exercise that you can use to emulate this, and I'll get to that in just a moment. First, we need to talk about the different functions of your traps, because you can actually divide the traps into three parts. You have your upper traps, you have your middle traps, and you have your lower traps. Nice and easy to remember. The upper traps are for shrugging, for elevating your scapula. So if you don't know the answer to a question, that's your upper traps. Your middle traps are for retracting your scapula, pinching them behind you, backwards like so. And finally, your lower traps are for depressing the scapula, pushing them down towards the ground. So if you really do know, and you definitely don't want to shrug. So to start with, how do we train the upper traps? This is what most people want to focus on to get that yoked look. So with everything we've just spoken about in mind, the exercise I'm going to recommend you might have already guessed. It's your friend and mine. It's the loaded carry, or farmer's walk. Simply here, you're going to grab one or two weights in one or both hands, and then you're just going to go for a walk. You should be here maintaining a slight elevation of the scapula. So you don't want your shoulders to just hang under the weight. You do want a little bit of shoulder stability, a little bit of control, and you're just going to slightly shrug the shoulders up. Then go for a walk, and after not long, you're going to feel your grip burning, you're going to feel it in your core potentially, but you're also going to feel it in those traps, of course. This doesn't have any range of motion, it's a isometric hold for the traps, but over time you're going to feel that metabolic buildup, and this will translate to bigger, thicker traps. And if you want to be a complete nutcase about this and take it to the next level, if you want to emulate that incidental type training, where you're training throughout the day without even trying, then you can even do this around your house throughout the day. Keep your kettlebell with you and simply make the rule that you're going to carry it to every room that you move to. So if you go to the bathroom, you carry the kettlebell, put it down, do your business, pick it up and carry it back to where you were. If you go up the stairs, you're carrying it with you. Now I recognise that this isn't super practical for a lot of people and that most people aren't going to do it, but if you want to go that extra mile and you want to see some crazy results for your traps, I recommend you just give it a go. But that still doesn't perfectly emulate carrying a child, because when you carry a child, the position is slightly different, and I think this is actually key in training the traps properly. Because when I'm carrying my kids, I'm not just lifting them up, I'm also pulling them into my body to keep them stable and safe. And to do that, I need to engage the middle traps as well, and bring my shoulder blades back and pinch them behind me. Also my biceps, because I'm curling them in towards me. And the tool you can use to most closely emulate this is a sandbag. Sandbag carries involve clutching the bag towards you with all your strength, pulling it in towards you and up at the same time, and then walking. And this is a great way to build those traps and get that dad strength for real. So you want to focus on bringing your traps back behind you, shrugging them up slightly and squeezing it at the same time, then go for your walk. It just makes a ton of sense to me to think of the traps as carrying muscles, because primarily the traps are for shoulder stabilization, for moving the scapula around, and if that's all they're for, why do they need to be so strong and so big? The answer, of course, is that when you're carrying something, you need a lot of stabilization to combat that weight fighting against you. Train them as they are intended to be used, and you're going to see great results. Of course, this also makes the traps fantastic as picking up muscles, which is why movements like the deadlift are also so fantastic for training the traps as a secondary benefit. Anytime you pick something up off the ground and walk with it, you're training your traps, even without thinking about it. Of course, there are lots of other great exercises for training your traps, but I'm going to take you to my local calisthenics park, Trim Trail, in order to discuss those and demonstrate some of those movements. So if the traps are carrying muscles first and foremost, I'd say they're probably climbing muscles as a secondary function. This is because when you're climbing, you might think of using your lats to pull yourself up, but you're also actually pulling yourself in towards the wall so that your center of gravity is closer to the wall. At least this is what you should be doing if you want to climb efficiently, and it's especially true when you're traversing, moving sideways. So rock climbing, actually a fantastic way to build the traps. At the same time, so too is performing a lot of calisthenics movements, such as the arched pull-up. Here you're going to perform a pull-up as usual, but instead of having your body in a straight vertical position, you're going to arch your back so that you're trying to bring the sternum up to the bar. This is very hard to do, so don't worry if you can't perform the full range of motion to begin with, you'll get there eventually, but you want to focus on bringing the scapula back and pinching them behind you together using the mid-traps to do so. This is a fantastic and functional way to train those traps. If you find that a little bit difficult, then an alternative is the inverted push-up or the bodyweight row. Here you're going to hang under a bar or a pair of bars and pull your body weight up, but you're going to keep your feet, your heels on the ground and your body rigid, so you're only pulling the weight of your upper body. You can perform this as a full row and just make sure you're being conscious to pinch the scapula behind you at the top of the movement. Or you can perform this as a scapular row, where you're going to keep your arms locked out and simply shrug your traps backwards in order to pull yourself upwards. So you're going to keep your arms straight, and it's just the movement of the scapula that's going to move your body. The upper traps are a little bit harder to perform with body weight, but not impossible. If you're doing handstands, handstand push-ups, a whole range of hand balancing movements, then you're often going to be pushing vertically into the ground. What you want to do at the top of a handstand is push into the ground with your arms straight, and of course this is essentially an upside down shrug, which is why performing a lot of hand balancing is a great way to actually strengthen and increase the size of your traps, surprisingly. This is a more advanced movement, but if you perform it against a wall, maybe on some parallettes or something, it does make it a lot more achievable. That then brings us to the lower traps, which we haven't discussed at all so far. You might be forgiven for thinking that you don't need massively strong lower traps, because after all, how often do you need to push down with your shoulders against resistance? Well, there are a couple of scenarios, such as during a climb up in parkour if you're climbing a wall, or maybe during the top of a muscle up. However, I get the point, you're not going to be doing it all that often. But that's not why you need to focus on training your lower traps. Your lower traps are important because they provide balance, and if you train your upper traps and your mid traps predominantly and ignore the lower traps, you can end up with muscle imbalances that lead to poor posture and a host of other health issues. So in this case, if you're training just your upper traps, and you've got all this force and tension pulling your shoulders upwards, but you don't have the relative necessary amount of strength and tension at the bottom pulling them back down into a nice neutral position, the result is you walk around like this with your shoulders around your ears, and this isn't great. You might enjoy the look, you look a bit like a gorilla, but it's going to impede your mobility, and it's also going to cause other issues too. For example, if you have upper cross syndrome, kyphotic shoulders, because you're used to hunching forwards, then having just these big traps on top of that ain't going to help. This can lead you to walk around with your chin sticking out, which, by the way, in sparring is a great way to get yourself knocked out. At the same time, if you're up like this, it actually restricts your breathing. It can lead to mouth breathing. It can even elevate your stress response, your sympathetic response, so that throughout the day you're slightly more stressed than you should be. So don't ignore the lower traps. Fortunately, there are once again a number of calisthenics movements we can use to train them really nice and easily. And a great option is the scapular dip, and here you're going to need a pair of dip bars, and all you're going to do is you're going to dip as you normally would, but this time you're going to keep your arms straight again, and you're going to simply dip using your scapula, so shrugging up and down in reverse in order to push yourself up and down using those lower traps, like so. And of course you can just perform this movement using a regular dip and just making sure once again that you use your scapula and push yourself all the way down at the top of the movement. Also highly effective are L-sits. So you can be on the ground or on some parallettes or even some push-up stands. You're just going to push through your shoulders, keeping your arms locked out so that you raise your buttocks off the floor and your feet are going to be out in front of you. Try and keep the toes pointed if you can. It's also a great core workout, great for compressive strength. It's a great all sorts of things workout actually. Now performing L-sit on a set of parallettes or push-up stands does make the movement slightly easier, it's absolutely fine, But if you perform it on the ground, this is actually better in some ways because it's going to force you to really push through the shoulders. It's going to open up a bunch of other movements as well. And if you can't do the L-sit to start with, then a great variation that is much easier is the N-sit. You're just going to bring your knees into your chest and perform it the exact same way, but it's going to be a lot easier because you don't have that weight out in front of you. So what do you think, guys? Is this a useful way of training your traps, a useful way of thinking about your traps? Do you think that the sandbag carry is a low-key, awesome trap workout? Let me know your favourites in the description down below. If you did enjoy this one, then please hit like and share it around. It helps me out immensely, and please subscribe. That's the biggest thing you can do to help the channel. And if you didn't know already, I also have a Patreon account. If you head to that in the link in the description down below, then you can get early access to videos that have the sponsor segments removed. And there's also a lively community forming there. You'll have access to the exclusive Facebook group, and there's more coming soon. So yeah, I'll leave a link, and I massively appreciate your support. It means the world to me, but also appreciate you just for watching. So thank you so much for watching this one, guys. And bye for now. By the way, guys, this video has been sponsored by Squarespace. A huge thank you to Squarespace for making videos like this possible and for being such great supporters of the channel. So Squarespace is a website creation platform that makes it extremely easy for anyone to get started building their own website. It offers a host of extremely customizable templates that all look highly professional. They're responsive, modern. At the same time, though, it also includes all the features you could need to build out your website to create something just as fully featured as some of the biggest brands on the web. In fact, many of the biggest brands do use Squarespace for their websites. And just a few of those features include revenue generation through gated members-only content, publishing tools that allow you to format your posts, schedule them to publish later on, a fully integrated commenting system with threaded replies and likes, member management, analytics and statistics, social media integration so that you can have your social media sites post directly to your page, e-commerce features, you can sell products from your site, make even more money that way. And if you want to expand the features of Squarespace even further, then you can do so by using one of the many plugins available created by the community and by Squarespace themselves. For example, if you want to expand your e-commerce solution, then you can use plugins to do things like track inventory, handle your accounting and tax reconciliation, track global shipping. Really, the sky's the limit when it comes to Squarespace, and these plugins just allow you to take it even further. If you want to find out more, then head over to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Bioneer, link in the description down below, and you'll get 10% off of your first domain or website. Thank you so much to Squarespace again for sponsoring. Thank you to you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.